You may completely disagree, and class each and every one of these performances as vital elements that help make the movies in question the captivating, jaw-dropping, and memorable treats they are. However, if some of these stars had it their way, they'd turn back the clock and do everything they can to improve what they rate as a pretty terrible or bang average piece of work. This is What Culture, and here are actors who hated their performances. Christopher Plummer was bored of his character, The Sound of Music. Despite it ultimately ranking as the late great Christopher Plummer's most famous role, the star behind the character of Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music clearly didn't adore that part. In fact, Plummer once stated that he felt a bit bored with the character, feeling that while the team behind the flick did all they could to make the father of the Von Trapp clan seem more interesting, it was a bit like flogging a dead horse. Did that stop folks praising the star's work in the film for the next 5 decades? Not a chance. And his charismatic work certainly helped immortalize the Oscar-winning classic. Plummer also couldn't help but eventually admit that the feature itself was a very well-made movie, even if it still wasn't really his cup of tea. Despite the Academy Award winner likely not classing his Von Trapp performance as one he was truly proud of, also noting to THR how the part was the toughest of his career, and so awful and sentimental and gooey, Plummer's charming work in The Sound of Music will forever be remembered by lovers of the iconic musical. Now I want to know, what is your favorite musical of all time? Is it The Sound of Music or something else? You let me know in the comment section down below.
Nicole Kidman, Australia. So when it was released in 2008, Baz Luhrmann's Australia was intended to help give the Australian tourist industry a rather big shot in the arm. Mixed reviews from fans and critics alike was matched with a modest box office return, a $210 million haul from a $130 million budget, and star Nicole Kidman was actually quick to slam her own performance in the picture. In Australia, Kidman plays a wealthy Englishwoman who ends up falling for an Australian cowboy played by Hugh Jackman. While the 4-time Academy Award nominee was quick to praise co-stars Jackman and a young Brandon Walters, speaking on Today FM, Nicole revealed how she squirmed in her seat throughout the world premiere of the film. More bluntly, the actress said how she looked at her husband Carl Urban and straight up told him, "I can't look at this movie and be proud of what I've done," before adding, "It's just impossible for me to connect to Australia emotionally at all." Interestingly, Nicole Kidman has only ever attended 2 of her own film premieres, those being Moulin Rouge and Australia, both directed by Baz Luhrmann, and both premieres only attended because the director asked her to.
Jamie Lee Curtis Virus. Few actors are as synonymous with the horror genre as Jamie Lee Curtis. Sure, Curtis has gone on to have major success outside of horror. One picture that Jamie Lee has particular disdain for is her appearance in 1999's Virus. Based on the comic book of the same name, Virus is a sci-fi horror offering based around an alien entity on a mission to turn mankind into a race of cyborg slaves. Despite having an impressive headline cast of Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Sutherland, and Billy Baldwin, John Bruno's movie was so horrendous that it didn't even make back half of its $75 million budget. As for Curtis's thoughts on Virus, back in 2010 she told WENN via The Express, quote, "That's a piece of shit movie. It's an unbelievably bad movie, just bad from the bottom," end quote. Continuing on, the famed Scream Queen would add, quote, "It was maybe the only time I've known something was just bad and there was nothing I could do about it," end quote.
Colin Farrell, Miami Vice. The 2006 big screen iteration of Miami Vice might have looked all kinds of gorgeous, but that was pretty much the only saving grace that it had, because it fell short on so many other levels. And if you ask star Colin Farrell, well, he'll completely agree with you. Here Farrell was Sonny Crockett opposite Jamie Foxx's Ricardo Tubbs, as Universal looked to recapture the lightning in a bottle that was the Miami Vice TV series of the 1980s. Only barely making its $135 million budget back and being slaughtered by critics, Miami Vice was labelled as a total dud. For Farrell, he's much more willing to take the blame for that, slamming his own performance in an interview with the Miami New Times in 2010. Miami Vice? I didn't like it so much. I thought it was style over substance, and I accepted a good bit of the responsibility. I just completely fell to shit on that one. Over the years, the Irish actor has openly talked about how he was in the midst of a major battle with alcohol addiction and drug issues during the filming of Miami Vice, which clearly would have impacted one's own ability to perform in front of the camera.
Ewan McGregor, Emma. Across Ewan McGregor's varied filmography, one movie that people tend to forget about is the 1996 period comedy Emma, which released in the gap between his breakout role in Trainspotting and his blockbuster success in The Phantom Menace. From McGregor's perspective though, it's probably a good thing that the film is often overlooked, because he reckons that his performance in it completely sucks. Speaking in 2003, McGregor bluntly stated that "I'm just not very good in Emma," labeling it as the worst thing he's ever done in his career. Ouch. He then confessed that he only took the role, that of Frank Churchill, one of Emma's love interests, because he viewed it as a departure from Trainspotting. He also called his wig in the film the world's worst wig. He's not had a lot of luck with wigs over the years, poor Ewan, has he? Yeah, look at that. Amanda Seyfried wants to redo the film completely, Les Misérables. If given the opportunity to go back and completely redo her part in Tom Hooper's big screen adaptation of Les Misérables, Amanda Seyfried would seemingly bite that person's hand clean off. Singing, even within a nice cozy studio, is remarkably daunting for some, so you can only imagine how stressful having to warble through some of the most iconic songs in musical theatre history live must have been. Seyfried has since noted that she still has nightmares about the various times she was required to let out a tune live as Cosette in the 2012 box office hit, a hugely emotional feature that also ended up being nominated for 8 Academy Awards. The actor added during an appearance on the Actors on Actors variety series that her voice just wasn't in the place it needed to be for the role, calling it weak before admitting that she was very unhappy with her singing. Seyfried is perhaps being a little unfair to herself here, as her rather solid voice undoubtedly wasn't the worst on show in the feature. That title unfortunately belongs to the otherwise magnificent Russell Crowe. Since then though, Seyfried has at least committed to strengthening her voice, and now finally feels like she's in a position to properly play Cosette if she ever got another chance.
Matthew Goode, Leap Year. The initial main couple of 2010's Leap Year are Amy Adams' Anna and Adam Scott's Jeremy. Tired of waiting for her partner to propose to her, Anna decides to travel from Boston to Dublin to surprise her love at a work conference with the intention to propose to him on the 29th of February, aka Leap Day. In typical rom-com fashion, anything and everything goes wrong for Anna. Her flight to Ireland has to land in Wales, her boat trip across the Irish Sea is hit by bad weather which forces her to take refuge in a small Irish seaside town, she has to thumb a lift to Dublin, has her luggage stolen, and it's all an out-and-out nightmare. And along the way, she meets Matthew Goode's Declan, who befriends her and helps her on her journey. And yes, of course, the two eventually fall in love with one another. Now, Goode has admitted how he didn't enjoy his performance in Leap Year, but he was more than happy that the shoot allowed him to spend weekends at home. After panning the film's script to the Telegraph, he exclaimed, "Was it a bad job? Yes, it was. But you know what? I had a nice time and I got paid."
Mark Wahlberg, The Happening. Mark Wahlberg seemingly hates Mark Wahlberg movies. During the press tour for 2010's The Fighter, Wahlberg discussed how the Fighter co-star Amy Adams was at one point up for The Happening and that she dodged a bullet by not landing a role in that M. Night Shyamalan picture. When asked about the first time he and Adams met, Wahlberg told the gathered press, as per the Hollywood Reporter, quote, "We actually had the luxury of having a lunch before to talk about another movie, and it was a bad movie that I did. She dodged the bullet and then I was still able to, I don't really want to tell you the movie, alright, The Happening. It is what it is. F***ing trees, man. The plants, f*** it." End quote. As alluded to by Marky Mark, The Happening does indeed center on plant life, or you know, the effing trees as he said, taking over the planet and attempting to kill off mankind.
Emma Stone, Aloha. 2015's Aloha caused plentiful controversy before, during, and after its release, with it largely coming down to how Emma Stone was cast as the half-Chinese, half-Hawaiian lead of Cameron Crowe's picture. Stone has no Chinese or Hawaiian heritage, and this was yet another example of Hollywood's uncomfortable habit of whitewashing. Seemingly unaware of how problematic her casting was upon taking the role, the aftermath of the movie's release saw the penny finally drop for the Academy Award winner, with her showing disappointment in her performance and her lack of awareness. In an interview with news.com.au, Stone expressed her remorse for ever taking on Aloha in the first place. "I've learned on a macro level about the insane history of whitewashing in Hollywood and how prevalent the problem is. It's ignited a conversation that's very important."
Josh Brolin, Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 received rave reviews from fans and critics alike, with most people loving its meta humor, stylish violence, and the way that it introduced brand new characters to the series like Josh Brolin's Cable and Zazie Beetz' Domino. Brolin in particular was widely praised as being one of the best parts of the movie, but the actor himself thinks that his performance wasn't up to scratch. "I thought I could have been better," he told USA Today. "I literally want to redeem myself to myself. I want to do a better version of what I do." Even though Brolin feels like he wasn't at his best in Deadpool 2, he did add that his chemistry with co-star Ryan Reynolds really clicked during all the time they spent together on the movie's lengthy press tour in 2018. So here's hoping he can produce a performance that he is proud of if he ever gets the chance to verbally spar with Reynolds' Merc with a mouth again in the future. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Emma Watson thought her accent was terrible, the perks of being a wallflower. Hearing Emma Watson confidently unleash an American accent as Sam in The Perks of Being a Wallflower admittedly felt a little bit odd at first, but it wasn't long before folks had gotten used to the new sound coming out of Watson's mouth, as she stole many a scene opposite the likes of Logan Lerman and Ezra Miller in the terrific coming-of-age drama. Watson herself didn't feel that her stab at the American twang was up to scratch, however, telling MTV News that she thought it sounded terrible and was really nervous about the whole thing. The British thespian may not have felt she smashed it out of the park with her accent work here, but the strong reviews that were sent her way in the wake of the film's release told a different story, with some outlets even going as far as to state that the American way suited her. She did sound pretty damn good.
Sir Alec Guinness, Star Wars: A New Hope. While so many of us hold Sir Alec Guinness's portrayal of Obi-Wan Kenobi dear to our hearts, the actor himself had vastly different thoughts on his time as the Jedi Master. In his Blessings in Disguise autobiography, Guinness was not shy about his unhappiness with his time on Star Wars: A New Hope, as well as his overall experience with the Star Wars franchise and with his own performances as Kenobi. That 1985 read sees the legendary actor slam the rubbish dialogue of Star Wars, detail in-person experiences where he told young fans never to watch A New Hope again, and discuss his genuine regret at having agreed to take on the Obi-Wan role. Guinness went on to describe how Star Wars was not an acting job, and added how his experience and his own performances made him feel out of touch. Still, despite these harsh words, Sir Alec did proclaim how he was grateful for it, because it saw him get a great payday for the 1977 effort that he presumed to be an utter flop. Oh, how wrong he was.
Michael Caine, Jaws: The Revenge. Even the biggest Jaws fans find it tough to defend the atrocity that was Jaws: The Revenge. Swimming to the silver screen in 1987, Joseph Sargent's movie was riddled with ludicrous plot points, overflowing with illogicality, and struggled to muster up as much bite as even the oft-mocked Jaws 3 did. Here, a great white shark stalks Ellen Brody all the way from Amity Island to the shores of the Bahamas. Along the way, we have Michael Caine as a budding love interest for Ellen, after the between-movies death of her husband Martin. And for Caine, he hasn't been shy about how he knew the movie and his own performance were utterly terrible. In a truly iconic response when asked about his turn in Jaws: The Revenge, Caine is believed to have said, quote, "I have never seen it, but by all accounts it is terrible. However, I have seen the house that I built and it is terrific," end quote. Online digging sadly doesn't throw up a precise source for that famed quote, although those sentiments are backed up in Caine's What's It All About biography, where he thanks Jaws: The Revenge for paying for his house and giving him a nice holiday.
Sally Field, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. In some ways, Sally Field is almost the May Parker that many forget about. These days we've got a much younger, cooler Aunt May in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and fans have shown mass adoration for Rosemary Harris's beautiful portrayal of the quintessential classic May in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Sandwiched between these two iterations of Aunt May, of course, was Sally Field's take on the character in The Amazing Spider-Man pictures. At one point in time, Sony Pictures had boldly announced The Amazing Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 4, Venom, and The Sinister Six, all to follow The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But when Amazing Spider-Man 2 disappointed, those plans were quickly shelved and the franchise itself would be ultimately scrapped. But for Field, that was seemingly a godsend. Speaking to Howard Stern back in 2016, Sally wasn't too fussed about her performance in these movies, particularly in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and admitted that she put not a great deal of effort into playing Aunt May. Even more damning on the 2014 sequel, she concluded, "It's really hard to find a three-dimensional character in it, and you work it as much as you can, but you can't put 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag." quite.
Tom Holland, Uncharted. This is an extremely unusual case, because most actors are savvy enough to only talk about their past performances in a negative light, not their upcoming ones. After all, before a movie has even hit cinemas, the last thing you want to do is draw any negative attention towards it, right? As an actor, you need to be saying things like, oh yeah, this is going to be the best movie ever, in order to make people as excited as possible, which will hopefully translate into stronger box office results. However, Tom Holland apparently didn't get that memo, because in an interview he actually used the word mistake to describe his performance in Sony's then upcoming adaptation of Uncharted, which was due for release in 2022. So Holland's problem with his performance was that he felt like he was more focused on looking cool than playing a fleshed out character, which was a quote-unquote mistake and something he vowed to never do again. Here are his words: "As soon as you start worrying about do I look good in this shot, acting becomes something other than playing a character. I think there are elements of my performance in Uncharted where I kind of fell under that spell of being, I want to look good now, I want this to be my cool moment. It was a mistake and is something that I will probably never do again." Oh, Tom, if you aren't spoiling the Spider-Man and Avengers movies, you're attracting bad press to a project that people already had severe doubts about. His PR team must be pulling their hair out. I mean, Uncharted still made a ton of money at the box office though, so it worked out at least. But yeah, don't do that again, Tom, either.
Zac Efron, High School Musical. So unhappy with his own performance in High School Musical, Zac Efron wishes that he could kick his own ass. In a 2016 interview with Men's Journal ahead of the Baywatch film release, Efron opened up about how he not only hated his performance as Troy in the 2006 Disney offering, but he hated the impact that that role had on his career in the ensuing years. He detailed, "I step back and look at myself and still want to kick that guy's ass sometimes. Like, that guy. He's done some kind of cool things with some cool people. He did that one thing that was funny, but I mean, he's just that f***ing kid from High School Musical." Whether you enjoyed High School Musical and Efron's Troy or not, there's no arguing that he was clearly stereotyped and indeed typecast in the immediate aftermath of the film's release.
Jennifer Aniston, Leprechaun. Every actor has to get their start somewhere, and for Jennifer Aniston, that start came back in 1993's Leprechaun. Rather than quipping wise, drinking coffee, and influencing millions of people across the globe with her hairdo though, Leprechaun found an Aniston who was vastly different to the Friends megastar that she'd go on to become. In Mark Jones's Leprechaun, Aniston's Tori finds herself tormented by Warwick Davis's titular creature on the O'Grady farmhouse she and her father are renting. And for the future Friends favourite, reflecting back on her performance in this 93 offering, makes her simply cringe. As Aniston told Howard Stern in 2019 via People, quote, "I watched it like 8 years ago with our mutual friend Justin Theroux for shits and giggles. We were dating, it was one of those things when I tried to get that remote out of his hand and there was just no having it. He was like, no, this is happening, and I just kept walking in and out cringing," end quote. While her own performance in Leprechaun is tough to watch for Jennifer Aniston, she also described the movie as a cult classic that at the time made her feel like she'd made it in Hollywood.
Jim Carrey, Kick-Ass 2. For Jim Carrey, he hated his performance in Kick-Ass 2, not because he necessarily thought it was an awful movie, but down to some of the violence that was featured in this 2013 sequel. In that film, Carrey portrays badass Colonel Stars and Stripes, a former mafia enforcer who had a change of heart and formed the Justice Forever vigilante group. The reason the Ace Ventura star distanced himself from Kick-Ass 2 and his own personal performance was down to the very real tragic events of this Sandy Hook elementary school shooting. As Carrey explained in a statement shortly before Kick-Ass 2 started its promotional push, "I did Kick-Ass a month before Sandy Hook, and now in all good conscience I cannot support that level of violence. My apologies to the others involved with this film." After the Canadian opted against promoting the picture, the opinion was mixed amongst fans and even the producers of Kick-Ass 2. While many could understand how Carrey removed himself from Kick-Ass 2's press tour, others pointed out how Jim knew about the movie's gun use and levels of violence when he signed on to appear in the film. Whichever side you fall on is up to you.
Tom Hanks' He Knows You're Alone. Released in 1980, He Knows You're Alone is as formulaic a slasher movie as you can pretty much get. Clearly jumping on the slasher bandwagon that had been kickstarted with John Carpenter's legendary Halloween, this effort features a paper-thin plot that's painfully predictable. For Tom Hanks, he had the supporting role of Elliot, a psychology student. However, Elliot was that small a character in the film that his fate wasn't actually ever in question, with him surviving the movie and not even getting close to being in the crosshairs of this picture's bride-killing protagonist Ray. During an appearance on the David Letterman show, Hanks mocked his involvement in He Knows You're Alone, with this early career role being one he'd clearly rather forget. He said, quote, "I played a guy in this movie. I always said, if this was Gilligan's Island, I would play the professor. It was that bad," end quote. Hanks would go on to laugh off the movie with Letterman, poking fun at the cliched tropes of the slasher subgenre and talking about how at that point the vast majority of his career was not made up of big-time films.
Anya Taylor-Joy didn't think she'd work again, The Witch. The marvelous Anya Taylor-Joy has already brought a ridiculous amount of exceptional performances to screens in some of the best films of the last decade. The brilliant feature that unquestionably put The Northman and Last Night in Soho star on the map, however, was Robert Eggers' 2015 folk horror by the name of The Witch. Here, Taylor-Joy plays the role of Thomasin, a youngster wrongly accused of practicing witchcraft, and swiftly announced herself as an acting force to be reckoned with. But Taylor-Joy certainly didn't feel that way after watching the flick a few hours before its Sundance premiere. In fact, the actor told THR that she was devastated after sitting down to watch the film before The Witch's audience screening. On top of thinking she'd never work again after this first major performance, Taylor-Joy also felt she'd let down the people she loved most in the world, and just didn't think she did it right. Thankfully, not a single soul alive shared that opinion after experiencing her fantastic breakthrough turn for themselves, with Taylor-Joy only going from strength to strength in the years that followed.
Mark Wahlberg, Boogie Nights. So, is the greatest performance of Mark Wahlberg's career his turn as Dirk Diggler in Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights? Well, if you're asking me, hell yeah it is. Paul Thomas Anderson's 1997 classic was a perfect movie in so many ways, complete with a compelling multi-layered narrative, a stunning ensemble cast, hugely memorable dialogue, a truly legendary soundtrack, and some of the swankiest fashion and style ever to be committed to film. At the core of this, of course, is Wahlberg's Eddie Adams. A young dishwasher looking to get his big break, Eddie ends up in the world of porn and takes on the aforementioned Dirk Diggler moniker. A devout Catholic, Wahlberg dismissed his Boogie Nights turn during a speaking event in 2017. As per the Chicago Tribune, Marky Mark has gone as far as to ask forgiveness from God himself for his time as Dirk Diggler. I just always hope that God is a movie fan and also forgiving, because I've made some poor choices in my past. Boogie Nights is up there at the top of the list. So yeah, he thought that his performance was so bad that he's asking God for forgiveness.
Heather Donahue, The Blair Witch Project. The case of the Blair Witch Project's Heather Donahue is a rather unique one when compared to the rest of the entries on this list. While Heather enjoyed the making of the Blair Witch Project and is proud of the job that all involved did, it's the fallout from her performance that troubled the actress. Speaking to GQ in 2016, Donahue revealed her performance in that revolutionary found footage offering led to her struggling to find work. Using her real name of Heather Donahue for her Blair Witch character, Heather revealed how some wouldn't hire her because they thought she was, quote, that annoying bitch from the film, while others believed the Blair Witch Project's narrative that Heather really was presumed dead. So yeah, you can kind of see where she's coming from here. She clearly really enjoys the movie, but is a little bit resentful of how much aggro it caused her in the later years.